Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks. My name is Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught the eye in this week's Punchline. I've got a fantastic panel of guests. We've got Richard Cook. He's Councillor Richard Cook. He's the leader of Gloucester City Council. We've got Margaret Adewale, the Managing Director of HR Department in Gloucester. And we'll be talking to her about Christmas parties, the do's and the don'ts, and also the rise of insolvencies are on the menu. We've got Sarah Mansfield. She's the co-owner of the £3.5 million Gloucester food dock, which at long last is opening and really going all guns blazing. So we'll find out what is going on there as well. And finally, last not least, we've got the CEO of Rooftop Housing Association, Boris Worrall, and they'll be soon developing the land behind Tesco at St. Oswald. So we'll find out all about that. But before we start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, because we couldn't do the show without them. Okay, guys, let's see what's making the headlines, courtesy of the BBC. So we got the Daily Telegraph. Musk tells Sunak AI will end work. The Guardian. Top tech firms to let governments vet VI tools. The Times. AI means nobody will have to work, says Musk. The Daily Express. Don't ruin our nation's day of remembrance, says the Express. The Daily Mail. Shadowy Tory number 10 fixer who had pet rabbit butchered in mafia-style warnings to his ex-girlfriend. Okay. The Financial Times. Interest rates held at 15-year high as Bank of England warns of stagnating economy. The Eye. Mortgage pain. UK warned not to expect any interest rate cut before 2025. The Metro. The Wrath of Khan. The Sun. Jesse and the Road Rage Killer. The Mirror. The Grin Reaper. Matt Hancock wanted to decide who lived or died. The Daily Star, and I love the Daily Star. Coco, I am God. And then finally, Free Willy. I love the Daily Star. Anyway, thanks ever so much. That's the headlines. Richard, let's start with you this morning. What have you picked out from the papers and the media?
Well, I saw an article online yesterday on the Mail, and it was about a lady almost getting washed off the jetty by the storm Ciarán yesterday. And I was just thinking how many storms we're getting these days. We've had Ciarán yesterday, and that's bringing flooding possibly to Gloucester over the next 24, 48 hours. We had Storm Babette 2 weeks ago, and that's caused flooding throughout Gloucestershire. In between that, there was the hurricane that barreled through Acapulco and devastated lots of the hotels there. Storms all over. Climate change is really wrecking our world, and the fires that happen throughout the summer in Canada are affecting large parts of the United States as well. The ongoing fires that are going on in Russia, not related to the war with Ukraine, but in the Arctic areas. Climate change is just wrecking our world, and I've been more and more involved in climate change issues of late, and I think we all will have to be in the future.
No, it goes without saying as well. I reckon we're going to be in for a really rough time in March, but I'm sure we'll have snow. You heard it here first. But no, Richard, I know you're very passionate about sort of the environment and what's happening now over by the recycling centre.
Well, they're about to start installing about 100 acres of solar panels, which will be providing about 2.5 megawatts to the grid. Or if they can run a private wire, they'll do that instead. Grid connections are not easy these days, although they've got a grid connection. Solar panels are variable in their supply. They don't provide supply all the time. They don't provide any supply overnight or in wintertime. So the grid are not keen on taking that supply. So we might have to look for a private wire to take it to some of the businesses in the area.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much for that, Richard.
The other thing that they're doing there, just to add, putting in 260 acres worth of trees as well over the next 10 years, about 100,000 trees, which will be a great addition to the Gloucester Nature Partnership plan to put a tree wall all the way along the Severn from way down in the south, Slimbridge area, all the way up to the Malvern Hills. That's going to be a great park when eventually it's done.
Wow, that's absolutely fantastic. I didn't realise that myself. What, from Sharpness, did you say?
Yeah, Sharpness all the way up to the Malvern area. The Gloucestershire Nature Partnership are planning I think they're calling it a tree wall. It's a huge project, and it will be probably many years before it's completed, but it's in the planning stages at the moment. And the 100,000 trees that will be planted over the next few years at the former landfill site will be part of that.
Okay, no, thanks ever so much for that, Richard. Okay, so Sarah, we'll go over to you. What have you picked out from the media, please?
I've skirted around a few things today, which tying together the AI headline obviously grabbed me, and I think it's grabbing everyone because it's a complex and unknown world for many of us, and difficult to navigate. But it was interesting, I thought, on the back of that, not so much about that story, which clearly is something that we'll all be watching as we go forward, but the number of stories that now spin off out of social media, and I picked up, without really trying, just 4. So one was that in Sweden they're now recommending strongly that under 2s don't use screens because of the impact on their learning, and that they reduce them even up to 5 years old. I saw the HBO boss in the US is in trouble for setting up trolling Twitter accounts to manage his reviewers, and how that's handling. There was something about TikTok and how there's a bias towards likes of sexist comments. So it shows that sort of underworld of commentary that's there. And then obviously with the COVID inquiry, all the trouble the government are getting in with their use of WhatsApp and so on. So I thought that was sort of an interesting group of stories, just how social media is influencing so many parts of our lives these days. Other fun stories, I think we all sort of picked up the Glasgow ticket delay, and again, the interesting thing on that is how people react. People get so angry and cross about this. I think the family are trying their best to give every a chance, and then you get this sort of angry backlash from people who have tried to book their tickets. And the other slightly bonkers one is the Noel Edmonds trying to buy up part of New Zealand to do yet another crinkly bottom park that I thought was quite fun, mad.
Is Noel Edmonds coming back?
I have no idea, but the paper seems to be full of him buying up part of New Zealand at the moment. So to try and do some sort of Noel Edmonds experience.
Well, I used to love the crinkly bottom. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that roundup. Margaret, great to see you as always. What have you picked out from us, please?
I've just picked up the articles about climate change, and it was quite amusing to note that apparently October was the warmest month in records, warmest October. And then, you know, on the issue of climate change, it's so much debate going on about it. And I just find that there's so many solutions, but unless everybody gets on board, what can we do? So this particular article was interesting because it went on to say that we could pump aerosols in the air and that will cool down the climate. But then on the other hand, you know, we have another expert saying that if we were fossil fuels is really a good solution, but it would cost 494 billion a year in order to implement it, which is a ridiculous amount of money. So we go back to the scenario where we've all got to try and get on board, not just in the UK, but across the whole world, to try and see what we can do to combat this.
What I don't understand, and maybe Boris can come in this as well, is about when they build new houses, why don't they build solar panels directly onto the roofs? You know, I mean, I'm driving around all over the place, and there's still new build houses. I was at a building site yesterday, Brunel Homes, just on the outskirts of the Forest of Dean, and they've actually built the solar panels into the frame of the roof. And it's absolutely fantastic. And so what they've done is they've future-proofed the house straight away with heat source pumps. Is this something that you're looking into, Boris, or is it just too expensive to start off with?
I mean, so you know, the private developers need to deliver margins, and solar panels have a cost. And slightly surprisingly at the moment, there's not that much evidence that there's compelling consumer demand for them. So basically what they'll be asking themselves is, are consumers, up for paying another five grand or whatever, if they buy a house with solar panels on it? And the overall problems with affordability in the housing market mean that extra 5 grand, given where interest rates are, and perhaps we'll come on to that in a minute, it doesn't make it attractive. I mean, if you look at Europe, they're generally much better at just sort of building that sort of infrastructure in. I mean, generally they do have a bit more sun than we do, but nevertheless, I think that certainly housing associations are good at this. We generally build to energy band A, and we generally do put solar on. But I think there's a whole raft of things that government could have a real big think about how they drive those kind of behaviours.
Okay. No, well, thanks ever so much.
Mark, just as a matter of interest, look, quite long and hard at putting solar tiles on top of the food dock. And part of the problem with that was just the return was minimal. So it would have been lovely to have used solar slates up there instead, but there was no return that made it worthwhile.
No, that is the biggest problem of all, isn't it? No, thanks for that. Well, let's go over to you, Boris. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
Yeah, so I've got 3. I mean, I'll touch very briefly on the COVID inquiry, which has been, fascinating to watch. But I think my main takeaway from that is, it just seems like a dream when you go back to that stuff now. We're in a completely different world, and it made me think about what we all lived through, and how awful and difficult and strange it all was. And sure, some things have changed. There's much more hybrid working. I'm working at home today, although I am in the office usually a couple of days a week. It'll be the same for the council, and of course business need to be wherever the customers are. But it just made me reflect on that incredible period that we all went through, and of course it's opened it all up again with some fairly kind of startling and upsetting, actually, revelations about some of the things that went on. We've touched a little bit on sort of housing and house prices. Now, I think we are seeing the back of the cost of living crisis in terms of the worst of it. And it was important that the bank held the interest rates, but that is going to be sticky. Inflation will be sticky. Interest rates will be very slow to come down. And that has a real impact on house prices, because construction costs are what they are, although inflation has changed that in the last 2 years. What really matters to consumers and to buyers, of course, is the overall price you pay per month and how much you can get a mortgage for. And that's really kind of slowing the housing market in terms of demand. But it's also it's a disincentive for the private developers to push houses through the system, because they've bought land at price X, expecting a sale at Y. Actually, Y is static or come down because of interest rates. So I think we're seeing the sort of the start of a trajectory towards less inflation and perhaps more stable interest rates. But it's going to be here for a while, and it is a problem for the housing market. And the final one.
Yeah, sorry, it's also the slowdown of the economy as well, unfortunately. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
They talk about unemployment going up. I think it's going up by a couple of percentage points. And
so I think there's a mixed picture, and I think it's very hard to navigate what's happening in the economy. And Sarah may have a better kind of hands-on sort of perspective on that. But there's so many different kind of perspectives and so much different data, and it feels very patchy. But I think the two big trends are inflation and interest rates, because inflation directly drives consumer behavior around buying stuff, whether that's food or petrol or consumer goods, and the interest rates absolutely define to a large degree kind of affordability of housing. And just on that, Mark, the story that Punchline's running on the Gloucester docks being up for sale, really interesting. I think it was last sold I was there last week. I love it. You know, that's my go-to sort of place when I'm in Gloucester, which fortunately I am often. You know, it was sold in 2011 for over £1 million. I think you're reporting that it's potentially on the market for less at 85, and it made a loss of about £5 million. And I just don't get the business dynamics that are going on there. You know, the place seems vibrant. It attracts great brands. It's a superb bit of the city. So I think there's a bit of a concern there, and you know, I don't know if it's on sort of Sarah's, Margaret or Richard's radar what the story is. I don't know if there's some structural issue with how it's financed or what, but you know, I think that was a real surprise to hear.
I'll have to just say that, just to correct you, but it wasn't actually sold. It was put up for sale beforehand for over 100 million by Peel Holdings, who built it, and they didn't actually sell it, and they took it off the market. So it was on the market and they took it off. Just wanted to clarify that bit, really. There's lots of things going on behind the scenes with Peel Holdings themselves. They're a very complex kind of business, but they own the Manchester outlet and place up in Scotland as well. So I think it's more to do with them rather than the, you know, and also sometimes these things need a reinvestment. And you know, and some new blood coming in to reinvest into the city. So I think they've kind of run out of cash. I wouldn't like to say that, you know, but that's the sort of signs that I'm seeing anyway. Thanks ever so much for that, Boris. And talk about running out of cash, it's a fantastic link over to GL1 and Aspire. And I just want to say congratulations to you, Richard, and your team, and Andy Lewis. And, you know, for the City Council, you sometimes don't get the praise you deserve as councillors, that you have actually managed to reopen GL1 in a short space of time. Can you tell us where we are at the moment then with what's going on?
Well, we've selected an interim service provider to take us through the next 12 to 18 months while we go through a full procurement exercise to find a long-term operator to run our leisure facilities. Freedom Leisure already operate the leisure facilities in Cotswolds and Forest of Dean, and probably nearly 100 other sites around the country. So they really know what they're doing. They're interviewing all the former staff from Aspire on Monday, or any who want to be interviewed for a job with Freedom. And hopefully within the next month or so, everything that used to be provided by Aspire will be provided by Freedom. I think it's been a great turnaround, you know, with 48 hours notice that Aspire were not going to continue operating, having said for the better part of 2 years before that they would be prepared to extend the contract. They asked us for a certain amount of money. We said, okay, here's the money. The only thing is we want to be able to look over your shoulder while you spend it. And they accused us of micromanagement, and that was the reason, well, one of the reasons why they didn't want to go ahead. We felt really let down when they gave us 48 hours notice, but we've turned it around really quickly and got back as many of those services as possible in a very short time.
And I think we've also got to praise the University of Gloucestershire as well, because they really rose to the occasion as well, didn't they?
Yes, absolutely. Without partners, you can't do anything substantial, and they were very, very quick and helpful.
I just want to also say, what's happening now with the sort of board of trustees and this, you know, the chief executive and the money for Aspire, because, you know, not being funny, it was mismanaged. You know, it didn't look great, Rich. We've touched on this before. Is there going to be a sort of more in-depth inquiry about what's happened? Will they be actually brought to task about why the company itself has done so badly?
I think that's up to the Charities Commission, not up to us. I know that we'll have internal inquiries about what we did and how we dealt with Aspire. But if the truth be known, their accounting was so poor that we couldn't understand it. And even when we asked your sponsors, Hazelwoods, to go in and do an investigation, they came out and in short said to us, we don't understand it either. So that's one of the reasons why we had to put those terms and conditions behind giving them additional money. We want to see what you're doing. We want to see how you're spending it. You know as well as I do that shortly before they decided to close, they awarded themselves 9.3%, senior management of that company. Why? When they can't cope with the money that they've got, they're awarding themselves so much money. That was a big question that I think you asked in one of your articles about it.
And the chief executive 9.3 pay rise from around £80,000 to 90,000. It equated to nearly a £9,000 pay rise for a company that was going down the tubes. That's the question, isn't it?
Well, it's a very good question. I don't know. We'll do our own internal inquiry, but I don't know whether the Charities Commission would want to take a good look at it, because mismanagement is a word that you've used, and it looks like that to me as well.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Richard, and congratulations again as well on turning it around so quickly. Keep an eye on Punchline. I'm sure we'll keep you updated. Okay, let's go over to you, Margaret. We've talked. Let's talk Christmas. Ho, 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 ho. Because, you know, it's Christmas party time. Punchline has just booked our Christmas party at Cafe Rennie, where we like to go. And obviously, there are rules and regulations and sort of things that, as a business owner, that we should all be aware of, really. Can you give us a little bit of a flavour on that? So if I'm throwing a party, what's my liability for my staff and things?
Well, you know, it's a great time of the year, but, you know, it can also raise issues with regards to behaviour. But one of the things I will say about organising a Christmas party is just make sure that everybody's involved, because that's really nice, from the cleaner to the person at the top. Have everybody together. A lot of companies, they like have different parties for different departments, but we're all small and medium enterprises, so it's nice just to involve everybody. And then the other thing I would say is worry about how staff are getting home afterwards, because, you know, in many years ago, companies used to extend the Christmas parties to the other house, but most companies don't do that anymore. So you have a lot of females all traveling home on their own. So just, you know, understand that, yeah, it's great to have the party, but worry about how your staff are going to get home afterwards.
What about behaving, Margaret? You know, would I be liable if one of my members of staff does something a bit stupid?
Oh, yes. So my next sentence was going to be have rules as to, you know, expectations as to behaviour at a Christmas party, because yes, people do get drunk, they do misbehave, and if they do anything stupid or silly, then the company is going to be liable for their behaviour.
What if they've even left the venue and you're not even with them?
Oh no, you're still responsible. If the incident occurred at the Christmas party, then the company will still be liable for that person's behaviour. So, you know, be very minded that you have rules and expectations as to what you expect or how you expect people to behave at a Christmas party. I know it's obvious because, you know, we're all adults and we should know how to behave, but after people's had a few drinks, it doesn't necessarily end up that way.
What's the worst one you've ever seen, Margaret?
Indecent exposure is the worst I've seen, and I won't go into details about that because it's not very nice. But yeah, and the person was sacked over it.
Right, okay. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch you, and thanks ever so much for that, is the rise in insolvencies. We had a story in Punchline that insolvencies are going up. Obviously, you deal on that side of things as well as a company. Are you seeing that trend? Is there, you know, are companies revaluing what they've got, or, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of restructuring going on at the moment, because on the one hand, you've got lots of companies that are doing very well and are recruiting and looking to expand. And on the other hand, you know, particularly in the construction sector, you know, it's not so good. Obviously, we have high interest rates. We have the situation with regards to mortgages. People aren't buying houses anymore, at least not in the same way. Everybody's sort of minded about costs and how expensive everything is. So, you know, there's quite a few redundancies in that sector. And, you know, it's really difficult because as an HR professional, I balance the needs of the individual who's been made redundant, as well as the needs of the company as well. So it's just a balancing, if you like, on the scales, whereby you have to do what is best for both sides, really. But one of the things that I found is with redundancies in particular, the main thing as a business you have to worry about is just make sure you follow the process and you do it in a correct manner, because, you know, ultimately, whatever your reasons for redundancy, and I will say that you can only make people redundant in certain circumstances, that you do it in a correct manner. And if you don't know how to do that, you know, do take advice, because it could cost you a lot of money if you get it wrong.
I've got to ask, I know you're a professional person, we're all professional people, but you must go home and you're dealing with that kind of stuff. It must affect you personally when you
It does, because it's really upsetting for the person involved. They've lost their livelihood. Albeit they may get another job in the future, but yes, it's all got to be handled very, very delicately. And obviously, some companies, they can't afford to make the there is a enhanced payment you can make in redundancy, but if you're cutting costs, you can't afford to do that. And some people just get paid the basic minimum, but you know, it's very difficult.
Okay, well, thanks ever so much for that great run through there, Margaret. Okay, let's go over to you, Sarah. The food doc. Okay, so where are we now then? We ran a story yesterday, obviously, with Holy Gelato. Fantastic family business. Who's next?
So next will be Bellamere. So we've got, just to sort of remind people, we've got 15 spaces there. And Hot Kettle have taken 2 of those. They opened at the end of September, beginning of October. And Holy Gelato are opening this weekend. So they've been having a soft opening for yesterday and today. And then Jake and Jamie, the owners of Bellamere Pizza, have been working hard to open up and fit out their own place. They'll be ready after next weekend, sometime after next weekend. We have then 3, 4, 5 more fitting out at the moment, and as they finish their fit outs, they'll be opening up. So it's a great story of all of these businesses who we've been chatting to for so long, finally being to sort of realise their dreams and open their doors. And it was lovely to see Will and Emily yesterday with their little daughter Sophie opening up their doors after their, you know, we all first started dreaming about them having a unit there about 18 months ago, and been working towards it. So it's a very nice time at the food doc. It's going to take a while until everyone's open, and so it's not a sort of a big splash of an opening story and come down, but there's some very good businesses there to come and see and enjoy. And what's lovely, actually, we're already seeing people walking through the food dock from the quayside up to Commercial Road, and that was part of it. It's to help this sort of link with the city centre and the docks and get those pedestrian routes going, and that's lovely to see as well.
And it's funny because it was all part of the Urban Regeneration Company, and you know, those particular links. Richard might help me out here as well, wasn't it, Richard? How do you link Gloucester Quays to the cathedral, to the centre of the city? And I do believe that what you've done there will help, won't it, Richard?
Oh, absolutely. It is going to be a link between the city and the quays. I was thinking about that last night. I didn't realise that Sarah was going to be on the show today, and I was going to talk a bit about the food dock as well. I think it's a great place. It's got a ready source of employment behind it in the student blocks, and a ready source of customers. So and it really does provide that great link that we've always been looking for between the docks and the city centre.
Okay, no, thanks so much. So, Sarah, I've got to quickly ask you, who are the other 5? And I know you can't give the order, but which other 5 you just...
Well, the other 5 that are fitting out at the moment are Hetty's Place, so Hetty's Brownies. She's doing very well at the moment, cracking on with her fit out. You have Cicely on quite a lot from Siblings Gin, and she's and her brother Felix, they're opening their own bar there, Our House. They're fitting out at the moment. We have Chuck Burgers, Elote Mexican, Strip Steak. They're all in the fit out process as we go on. There's another one we hope to be announcing very shortly that we start their fit out as well. So a number of food offerings opening up before Christmas.
It's very, very exciting.
I thought just also, I don't know whether you want me to respond to Boris on the comment about consumer spending at the moment. I mean, as far as the
please do.
Charity sector's view of the world is research does show that people are spending on experience. I don't know the psychology behind that, but they're preferring to spend on experiences than a hard product. So rather than doing it at their house or whatever, I think people, whether that's coming out of COVID or not, who knows, and the change in dining during COVID as well. But certainly that's the evidence that's showing that this sort of experience of social gathering, the areas where people can get together, meet and enjoy themselves, are featuring very well. And the other thing is that the sector's very polarized. So if you have a very good product in a great location, it's doing very well. if you have a bad location and a product that's not great, then you do very badly. So it's becoming a very polarized sector in many ways.
I couldn't agree with you more. No,
Obviously with Gloucester and the views that we've got, then we hope to be on the positive side.
and please go and visit it because the views are spectacular. Thank you ever so much, Sarah. All right, okay, Boris, the views behind Tesco in St Oswald's aren't great. It's a very derelict wasteland, let's be honest about it. It's been empty for a long time. How many houses are you planning to get there again? I can't remember from the top of my head. And when are we going to see some spades in the ground?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see some spades in the ground fairly soon because we've got some government money that we work with the City Council to secure to remediate the land because that land is contaminated. And in actual fact, it's got an infrastructure gas pipe underneath, so we need to be careful not to break that. Of course, we won't. I mean, I think, the first thing to say is I echo your comments about Richard and the leadership at the council. This site has been derelict forever. And the council has really worked its socks off to make this happen. We're talking about investment of about £50 million coming into the city, and actually you will have good views of the cathedral from there. Some of the houses will have great views. You'll almost certainly have the ability to walk into the city under the railway line, and of course you've got the kind of the wetland and the river to the right. This is a great example of why the city is a really superb investable proposition. We've been able to invest in Gloucester, A, because the housing market's strong, and B, because the council's helping make things happen. You're going to get a mixed set of houses, around about 300. Around 100 of those will be developed for private sale, but like any kind of private house that you wanted to buy on the market. There'll be 200 of which, roughly half will be part buy. We call it shared ownership. Typically, you buy 40 or 50% and rent the rest, and that gets you onto the housing ladder. And then the other 100 or so will be for affordable homes for social rent. And there's huge need in the city for all of those types of houses, actually. I think the other thing, we talked a little bit about solar panels and that sort of stuff. We're looking to develop as close to sort of net zero as we can. These houses will be very high spec in terms of energy performance. We won't densify the site either. We want there to be as much public realm as possible, and a mixture of sort of houses and sort of low level apartments. So I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be really important for the city because it is close to the city centre, actually, and that site has been used as the car park and all the rest of it. So we're really thrilled to be doing this in partnership with the council. We need to get planning. That'll take a bit of time because it does. But I know that Richard's team will be in partnership with us on making sure we can get that hopefully within the next 12 months or so that we can sort of start work on that. Where are we now? So 2020, end of 2024, early 2025 to actually start the building. But I think you'll see some activity there fairly soon as we start to clear the site ready.
Okay, no, it is, and I'm probably one of the few people who've been to that site as well and wandered around it, and it is just a derelict. Well, just derelict land, really. And I just want to say congratulate you on your team as well for bringing the old, I think it was the Quick Save supermarket on Bruton Way. Obviously, you guys took that on, and now it's full of apartments and things. That was a tricky build, I would imagine, as well. So, but congratulations.
Yeah, that was a very difficult build, and from a financial viability point of view, it was really problematic, and it was kind of on the borderline. It was slightly before my time, but I know that the board at the time had a real decision to make about social value versus viability because it didn't really stack up because of the cost and the difficulty there. As it happens, that has got solar panels on the top. You haven't been up there, but I have. You've got a great view of Kingsholm and the cathedral and other things. But we've been able to develop quite a lot of houses homes in Gloucester. We really like working there. It's a great place. We think it's a great place to do business.
No, thanks ever so much to Boris for giving us an overview, and that's the kind of end of that bit of the bit of the show really. So finally, we got to pick out the best, the pick of the punchlines. If I get my words out. So what have you got from this week's punchline, please, Richard? Would have to be quick. Just
okay. Well, very quickly, and I probably shouldn't talk too much about this. It was an article about housing and affordable homes. Bromford deliver 472 affordable homes. Now I know that they're a Tewkesbury-based business, but I'm sure that everybody recognises that Gloucester needs more homes as well. And I'm really delighted to have been working with Boris, because we've done really quite well in terms of the 300 homes that he's going to be, or his company's going to be putting into St Oswald's. On the other side of the city centre, a company called Utopia putting another 315 homes across the road from the hospital in the old railway sidings. I spent some time talking to them when they were first coming up with their plans, and the last I heard from them was that they were hoping to break ground later on this year, or at the end of this year. And everywhere we look around Gloucester, we're finding the old brownfield sites and getting them developed, because in Gloucester we don't have the space to start building new homes. That's why our new homes are going to have to be in Tewkesbury and in Stroud. And it's poor to have to do that, because they get the council tax, but we have to provide the infrastructure, because they're usually close to the city. So that's an issue. But we do have to be finding new homes. We have a rising population, and unless we build new homes, we will not be able to give homes to our future generations.
You want to go the gasworks then? What about the gasworks on Bristol Road? It's a massive site. Would that still remain industrial, or could that be turned into homes?
I don't actually know. I think they're still remediating that site and making sure that it's not contaminated in any way. I can ask that question, whether that's possible to use for homes. But I know that it would be unusual to put a small housing estate within all that industry. So it's more probable that it would be retained for business use.
The remediation is finished. This is the story that we're breaking today. It's going on the market. But no, it's very, very interesting. Of course, there was the big chemical factory that closed down. That's now all houses as well. So, just down the road from where I live, actually. No, thanks ever so much for that, Richard, for your pick of the punchline. Margaret, what have you picked out for us today?
We've already touched on what I had picked out about restructuring and the situation with regard to the construction industry. So I had looked at an article about the small firms' confidence levels recover, and that's quite good to hear. Obviously, companies are still struggling, particularly in some sectors, but the future looks good for the small business. And the sort of article just looked at areas where things perhaps hasn't been so good, and sectors where it has been. So that it's looking good.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right, Margaret. Thanks ever so much for that. Sarah, what have you picked out from us this week?
Well, obviously, for me, it's the opening for Holy and their family, which we've already mentioned. So just to remind everyone again, that's tomorrow. They'll be there and ready to welcome everyone. It's also, I think, others, and it's been mentioned already again, the keys going on the market, and it's important that the docks is such a massive part of Gloucester's backdrop, and what happens there impacts everything within the city. So that'll be one to watch, and will be very interesting to see the outturn of that. There's been such a huge amount of good stuff done at that end of the docks that we want to see that continue, and everyone that will.
I think the one thing about the Gloucester Quays, and this is not to dummy, obviously the hospitality and retail trade is really, really difficult, but there was a stage where they were really getting the top brands. They were, getting some really super duper top brands in, and now unfortunately, Nike's gone, Gap gone. They got the old Next sort of lower sort of quick sales stuff in there. They've got Candy Store, Pick and Mix. They've got Calendar Store.
Yeah.
the danger is
retail is a complicated world at the moment, as we know. It's been suffered, and the outlet world is very niche within that, and it's a difficult balance for the city. We don't want lots of discounted goods at one end of the city dragging the footfall across for the retail. We need the city centre retail to be healthy and vibrant as well. So it is a difficult balance to get right. As you say, it was attracting some very good names and some brands at one point.
Okay.
It would be lovely to see as well that there's a lovely walkway from Gloucester Quays all the way down to the cathedral. The cathedral is wonderful, it really is. It's great. People talk about it outside of Gloucestershire, and it would be lovely to see that whole area. You could do so much with it.
Yeah, the linkages.
I think that's absolutely right. The circulation routes, there's so much that we can do with the circulation routes, as I'm sure everyone is on everyone's agenda.
Okay, we're kind of running out of time. Sorry. Boris, what's the story from your pick of the punchlines this week, please?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the food doc. My wife ran her own business, a yoga business. I know how hard it is. This is the stuff that makes places tick. It's really hard to do. So, well done, Sarah. And I love the fact you know the people moving in, their stories, their dreams, their visions of, whatever it is, food or drink or whatever it is. And, I think it's just brilliant bringing independent little businesses in to, make those dreams come true and provide something a bit special for people, something a bit different. So, really pleased to hear that's going well. And, huge congratulations, Sarah. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, congratulations.
I'm going to very quickly echo what everyone else has said about the support of the council as well. It's done with the support of the council that knows what will work.
Okay, no, well, that's unfortunately all we've got time for. I'd like to thank my fantastic panel and guests for joining us today, for you for watching the show, and also our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, who we couldn't do it. Remember, it's all in the punchline, and we'll be back next week. Bye.